Hello and welcome to Nourish in, Waste out. This is a restorative practice that's going to help you take in what you've expended and also let go of what does not serve you. We'll be dedicating this more so to the lungs and the intestines. So with our lungs, we're going to be deeply breathing, accessing and supporting the space, especially through the rib cage and the chest, so that as we breathe deeply into the body, we're accessing the entire and full capacity of our lungs. In addition, we'll be putting some pressure to our abdomen, especially into that intestinal area. And that's simply to sort of help push things along, because we can tend to, when we get stressed, not only expend more energy than we're taking in, but also stop the natural processes of our bodies. So in this, if you are feeling stressed, your immune system can be compromised. This practice is geared to not only support the immune system, but act as a preventative measure for it. So with that said, you will want to have a blanket, a block, and a bolster. We will start by taking this blanket and sitting up on top of it, propping ourselves up in axial extension, which just means a long spine in a deep seat. Feel free to take your hands to your knees with palms down to ground, or turn them up to receive. Whichever method you've chosen, settle into that space and begin to close the eyes. Noticing the breath, how it's entering and exiting the body. And if there's any thoughts that are coming up at this time that are trying to distract you from this moment, and in doing so, are they creating tension within your body? Perhaps a shorter, shallower breath, or a little tight feeling in the belly. Can we begin to soften the belly and breathe into it? To help down-regulate the nervous system, we can take what's known as nadi shodhana. This is a pranayama practice known as alternate nostril breathing. If you're familiar with it, feel free to keep the eyes closed, but if not, you can open your eyes to see how we position the hand. So taking your dominant hand, whichever you choose, is we want to take our index finger and middle finger towards the palm. This will keep the ring and the pinky and thumb out. We want to use the thumb and the ring finger, or the thumb and the pinky, to close off each nostril as we breathe. We look to close one nostril off, breathe in through the open one, close it, breathe out of the newly opened one. Breathe in, close, breathe out, alternating between the nostrils. If you notice perhaps when you're doing this that one side is more closed off than the other, that's perfectly natural, because our nostrils do tend to, at least the air pathways through them, do alternate naturally on their own. So by doing this, we're taking a bit more control of how that breath is entering as well as how it's exiting. So we'll begin. So letting all of the air out of your body, close off your right nostril, and inhale through the left. Close the left and out the right. In through the right, out of the left. Let's do a few more here. Feeling free to be at a pace that works for you. Nourish in, Waist out. Let's take one more to each. After that final exhale, taking your hands back to your knees. This time, if you didn't have it before, palms facing down. As you breathe in, pull your hands along the knees without letting the knees pop up. Push them down against the hands and take a seated dog. Exhale, push down into the knees. Try to push the knees up into the hands, tucking tailbone, seated cat. So creating this little bit of energy, this little bit of heat through dog and cat. Let's do one more here. And now on your next inhale, we take that seated dog, and then exhale, start to roll it out to one side, whatever you choose, giving big circles through your torso. Almost as if you're guiding it with the rib cage, chest, rib cage, upper back. Using the hands to help push and pull knees down, knees against that push or pull of the hands. And then switch the direction, making sure we get the neck involved. Finding this freer movement through your body. And then beginning to lift up nice and tall. One more dog. One more cat. And then sitting up tall, we will take the blanket out from underneath and open it up so that we have a bit of a longer rectangle. We'll roll this up like we do our yoga mat, a little looser perhaps. We want to have about a 3-inch diameter of the blanket. Now taking this to the back of your mat, lining long edge with long edge, we will take our way down to axial extension in a supine position. So working this long length of your spine, your tailbone is on the floor, and your low back all the way through the neck will be supported as you lower your way down, lining it up along the spine. Now we want to feel that sacrum on the mat as well. So not just tailbone, but this flat portion just above it. So in the blanket, you'll know if it's not on the floor because it will feel very pressurized, if that's the right way of saying it. And it's just going to feel uncomfortable. So find that comfort. Give a little reach up with the arms, wrapping around to hug yourself. Feeling the shoulder blades separate. Releasing your hug. And then taking the blanket from behind your head here, rolling it up like a snail shell, and positioning it under the neck. Allowing your arms to rest by your sides, and perhaps the legs to extend. So this blanket being rolled underneath the neck is going to give a little pull of our occipital point, so a little extension through your neck. If there is any pain involved, feel free to bend the knees to try and adjust for it, or unroll the blanket slightly so that we have less of a diameter to it and try again. We'll stay here for a few minutes. Closing the eyes, becoming aware of the mind. Perhaps feeling that deep belly breath. Side of your ribs, into the chest. With every exhale, a simple release of tension. Very good. Now, any transitions we take between long held poses, whether you're in a yin or in this case a restorative practice, we want to take the change slowly. If we jolt ourselves out, not only will it alert the mind, but our static position will suddenly be taken out of its place, which will then make the body even more tense, possibly even more tense than it was before. The slower we go, the more our body and our mind will adapt to that change. So starting to lift the head slightly, the blanket will start to pull itself away naturally, guiding it back with your hand until you start to make your head come all the way back down. Drawing one leg in if you've had them extended, meeting it with the other, and rolling off of your blanket onto your side. Slowly pressing your way up. And now we're going to take this blanket, bring it perpendicular with the mat so that we have a long edge of your blanket matching with the short edge of your mat. Bringing yourself back down onto your blanket. We want to feel the shoulder blades supported and the blanket tucked just underneath this armpit region here. As you do so, the head is going to no longer be supported by your blanket as it was before, but instead it will be hanging back behind you, so an opening of the throat now. This will offer a deeper breath. So as the arms extend out to your sides, lower the head behind. And if you're feeling these shoulders starting to kind of crunch up towards the ears, that's an indication to bring your blanket a little lower so that you can continue to externally rotate the arms, palms up to the sky, elbow creases to the sky, allowing just for an expansion of your heart space. We will stay here for a few minutes. Feeling that throat space clear its way out, breath entering both nostrils. Maybe noticing now if one nostril is more dominant than the other. If the left side is more dominant, that means you are more connected to that yin side of your being, that more feminine, cool, moon-like energy. Whereas the other side is more blocked off. In contrast, if the right side is more open, that's the more masculine, yang, sun, heated energy within you. And by paying attention to which side is more dominant, you can start to practice towards the one that has been a bit more submissive. Meaning, if you've been very heated lately or overstressed, a restorative practice such as this may be just what you need. Once more, we want to connect the palms up to the sky and then roll your way over onto your side. Pressing up to just remove your blanket out from underneath you and then lower yourself back down. If you do not have your block near you, bring it here as we're going to use it. So I mentioned that there's, in the first position we took, that occipital point area being supported. Our neck holds so much stress, especially through this upper trapezius region, so the area between the neck and the shoulder, that if we can start to provide pressure to it, any pressure upon the body is like this wonderful reset, this almost stop action to the blood, not even blood flow, but just this stop action to that one area to say, hey, we need to slow you down. Now we can resume once you've released the pressure. So taking your block, if this is the first time you've done this, you're going to place it at its low height. We want the edge of the block that is closest to us to be just at the very base of the skull. At no point should this block be touching your neck. If it is touching your neck, that is a huge no-no. Bring it up higher. So whole back of your skull positioned on this block. Now, if you're not feeling that occipital points, these two bony prominences just at the base of your skull being pulled upon, you can take this to a medium height. So for myself, this is where I feel it more. But this is certainly dependent upon your neck and your range of mobility in that area. So with that said, we want to make sure that we're providing just enough pressure for sensation, but not pain. So to begin with, we're going to take our head to this straight up position, meaning the nose pointing directly to the sky. And this is a point that I want you to remember, this nose to sky, because it's going to be a measurement of distance for where your head goes next. So nose to sky, we're going to hold it here, allowing the chin to sink towards the chest. Once more, feeling free to extend or bend the legs. You are definitely going to get a double chin happening here. So no worries. Just let it happen. It certainly may feel awkward at first, but the more you can just let your head hang heavy upon the block, releasing that pressure into these areas, the more relief we'll receive. So I mentioned remembering that pointing of your nose to the sky. You will now take your ear, left ear, towards the block, turning until
You feel so much sensation, so much pressure that you say, maybe my ear is touching the block, maybe not, but I don't feel like I could go further than this. Once you hit that edge, from this point where your nose is facing to where it was pointing to the sky, go halfway in between. As you do, and you take that slow motion movement here, you should feel a bit of a pressure, this very tender connective tissue point being pressed upon. Stay here. And now, from here, where your nose is pointing now to where it was pointing to the sky, bring the nose halfway between those 2 points. There's a second little secret connective tissue spot right about here. Again, it might feel a little tender at first, especially if this is the first time you've done this or you're not used to getting some pressure here. If it's feeling again too much and you have it at medium height, lower the block. Hang out here. And now, slowly bring your nose to point back to center. Pause here and notice the differences between the left and right side. That little release happening on that left side, the occipital point. This is great to do if you are like me and have chronic migraines or even just headaches, because it's this release right here, not for just stress, but this tension headache release that provides so much relief. Now remember the center point and take your right ear towards the block, going to that very edge until you eventually come from here to halfway to center. Find that first tissue point. Breathe and relax into it. From here to center, halfway between. Small little micro movement here to get to that next point. Now beginning to bring it all the way back to center. Staying here once more. Noticing any differences or even now similarities. Maybe it feels a bit cooler, as though there's a flow of water going down and up through the neck. So just as we did with the rolled blanket, we want to slowly remove the block from beneath the head, perhaps supporting with one hand underneath the head as it lowers down to the floor. Removing your block off to the side, and even rocking your head side to side for just a few moments before once more coming onto your side again, rising up to seated. So from this place, we're going to take the blanket, unroll it, and create a larger diameter, folding it over so now we have a smaller rectangle, but not all the way folded. Now taking the blanket, go ahead and roll it up. So these pressure points helping to release those areas that tend to get very tight and stopped up from the stress we experience. That said, we want to think of that belly button, that navel region, lying directly on top of the blanket. So in doing so, you can come up to tabletop, bring the blanket about halfway down your mat. Again, we want this nice thick roll of a blanket. Have your bolster and block nearby. We're not going to use them quite yet, but in time we will. You'll begin to slowly lower your way down onto the belly. Again, belly button right on top of that blanket. Spreading the legs wide apart so that as you come down, you feel this pressure into that abdomen region. Letting your hands rest underneath the forehead. Feeling free to turn your head to one side. And if you choose, I will let you know halfway through when to switch your head again. Much like when we had the axial extension with our blanket, if this feels like there's just too much pressure, like this cannot be sustained or held for a longer period, unroll the blanket slightly and then return to resting on top of it. Feel the blanket just beneath the ribs, so not touching the rib cage, but below that area. At this halfway point, switch your gaze, if you haven't already.
Starting to bring your head back to center, begin to slowly press your way up, guiding the bolster beneath the chest and the rib cage. Lowering yourself back down, allowing the head to hang heavy, glutes to soften. Now, if your pelvis is feeling like there's too much pressure upon it, you can unroll your blanket so that it itself is holding or supporting your pelvis underneath. Again, we want the feet to be spread wide, glutes soft, and if you need a little support of your head, you can take your block in front, letting your forehead rest down towards it. Whichever you've chosen, stay here. Perhaps holding opposite shoulders or opposite elbows. You want a little greater sensation, pushing the bolster even closer underneath that rib cage. The head hanging heavy. The breath entering now into the back body space, in particular the area between your shoulder blades. The belly compressing against the mat, the blanket, the bolster to provide that back body expansion. Now beginning to press up again. Using your hands to guide yourself back up to a tabletop. Bringing the knees wide, the big toes together for a brief, wide-kneed child's pose. Arms resting on top of your bolster so that you allow the heart to sink a bit deeper, getting more into your shoulders. Tailbone sending its way back. Start to press your way up, walking back. Unroll your blanket if you haven't already. Fold it over back to its starting place. And then
once more over. So we have this nice cushion to work with. Turn your bolster to be parallel with your mat, so long edge to long edge. Bring yourself with your right hip next to the bolster. Stacking your knees, bringing the blanket between your thighs. Knees stacked, ankles stacked. And as you begin to lift up nice and tall, breathe in and then exhale. Guide your torso towards your bolster, getting a nice big twist before lowering down on top of it. You can cradle your arms around it and turn your head to face the right, if you wish. Really getting in a breath to that left side of your ribs. So a part of this nourishing in, waste out, is that every breath is inviting this prana, this life force into your body. Much like a sponge, we're soaking in that prana. And then as we wring ourselves out in a twist, we're literally twisting a sponge, squeezing it out and ridding ourselves of any of that dirty water, any of that stuff that has been just blocked into us, so that as we get ready to soak in more, as we release the twist, as we breathe in that space, we're inviting in a fresh supply. Start to press your way up, mindfully doing so, to then switch sides. So turning now left hip to your bolster, blanket between legs, breathing in lengthens, exhale guides you over to twist. Feeling that breath all the way, even from ribcage to that right hip point, this waist expansion. Even as you're here, you might hear that soft beat of your heart. Connect to it. Listen. Ask it what it needs. Is there something in your world that has been causing you stress? Perhaps something completely out of your control. It's okay for it to feel and even be known as being out of your control. We come to a space that lets us nourish ourselves, take in what we've expended, take back what we've given. It is this self-care that allows us to overcome any challenges life throws our way. Start to press your way up. And as you do so, take your block and place it underneath your bolster, setting it up at a medium height so that your very top of your bolster here is so supported, so steady that when you lie back down on it, it will not be moving anywhere. Bringing yourself back to face the back of your mat, low back to your bolster. We will open up our blanket once more, now to a very long rectangle. So just almost like your blanket has been just folded in half. You may fold it over again so you have this long rectangle, and then roll it up like we did before until you have this long blanket. Go ahead and take your feet, hugging the heels in towards your glutes. Place your blanket over the ankles, hugging it to the outer hips. Opening the knees apart, the soles of your feet are hugging together, so big toe all the way to the pinky are touching. Heels are touching, soles of your feet melding. When you are ready, you will slowly lower down by tucking the tailbone underneath and bringing your spine along your bolster until you come to rest in this reclined bound angle, Supta Baddha Konasana. Again, we want the blanket supporting the outer thighs, feeling this opening of the inner thighs, belly, rib cage, chest, arms extending out to the sides or even overhead. Which you choose is entirely up to you as we rest here. This is where all that pressure you've put upon your body, those longer holds, the squeezing out, gets this space to return to a natural rhythm and flow. One that is not stopped up by any stress or overexerted. Just letting yourself come back to balance. Eyebrows softening, eyelids heavy, lips parting, tongue falling away from the roof of your mouth. Knowing that even in this vulnerable state of accepting what we cannot change, we are supported in that space.
And it is from that acceptance, from that support, that we garner our own changes for which we are in control. How we perceive, how we respond. This time you might even feel that little thumping happening within your glutes or even hips. It's okay if you don't, it's just an experience. One that is personal but shared. Now using your hands to guide the knees back to center. Taking your way over to one side. You'll press up. Moving the blanket. Now coming to supported Gomukhasana, so supported cow face. It's a little different than your traditional cow face. We're not compressing the knees so much as we are just crossing the legs. Now you want to settle your way up along your bolster with your legs so that you're supported all the way from underneath this line of your butt cheeks. And feel free to even open up your blanket and drape it across your body as you rest towards the floor. So as you come on down, making sure you're supported from that line of your glutes, we're going to take the legs up to the sky and start by crossing the right leg over the left. So knees crossing one on top of the other so that the toes are now pointing to opposite sides of the room. Lowering the legs, we want both feet off to the sides. No worries if the feet are touching the floor or not. Again, it's the cross of the legs. Letting your body rest here. Because over time, you just might find that your hips, your knees, your legs as a whole begin to accept this new way of positioning yourself. Meaning they might feel a bit heavier over time. Let this sensation arise within you however you experience it. So taking the right leg off the left leg to the sky, pause for a moment.
before crossing the left leg over right, toes to opposite sides, and letting the legs drape along your bolster. Breath as it naturally comes to you. The mind begins to continue its wandering. It's okay. You might really enjoy that wandering feeling. But if the thoughts become distressing, come back to your breath, what you notice in the physical body, perhaps areas of tension where you are squeezing, maybe those inner thighs, and beginning to release them. Letting the support of your props take you where we have positioned, the benefits of this positioning. Now letting the legs unravel themselves, reaching up to the sky, and then even taking your blanket, draping it now all the way over your entire body, so that as you extend your legs, you take them to line up along your bolster, allowing the blood to gently flow down your legs to the hips, settling towards the spine. Breathing deeply, fully, with the knowledge that you are able to take yourself to this place at any time. Stay here for as long as you wish. Because when you are ready, you'll take your knees in, rolling to your side to slowly guide your way back up to a seated place. Once more, there is no rush. Stay here. Enjoy this place of ultimate relaxation, coming up in your own time. I wish to thank you for sharing your practice with me, your light, your love, your energy. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Shanti, shanti, shanti. And together we say, Namaste.